was conceived during the pandemic. We couldn't meet face-to-face to have dinner, but we decided that we might as well just have virtual dinner. But a number of people have been requesting in recent times that we should meet physically for dinner, for this dinner. So maybe one of these months that would happen. But for now, I think we will go ahead and be having our virtual dinners until we are able to meet. So please, can we take the next 2 minutes? Just let's know who is on the call. Introduce yourself, your business, what you do, what you can do for other people in the chat. Yeah, this is also a networking opportunity to introduce ourselves and our businesses. And then also what city you are joining us from. All right, so let's take a moment and do that. So everyone, please go to the chat and then introduce yourself, tell us what you do, tell us what you can do for us, for customers here, and tell us what city you are joining from. Okay, so who goes first? Let's go, everybody on the chat. Please introduce yourself in the chat, what you do, and where you are joining us from. All right, let's keep it coming. Let's keep it coming. All right. All right. So I can see Temitayo. Temitayo is joining from Lagos, and Temitayo is a revenue and tax consultant. This is fantastic. And you will see why I'm very excited that you're here, Temitayo. You will see why I'm very excited, because we're going to be talking a lot on things relating to tax and revenue. Omowumi is joining from Lagos, and Omowumi is in pharmacy business. Lai Shebiko is joining us from Lagos as well. Charles, yes, Charles, nice to have you here. Charles is joining from Ghana, and Charles is in real estate. Yeah, okay. So we have Peter from Lagos. Raymond is into human capital and real estate management. Keep it coming, keep it coming, keep it coming. All right, Innocent is an architect. Raymond Ofori is joining from Ghana as well. Architect Innocent is joining from Lagos. Sherifat is into corporate and promotional deals and logistics, and Sherifat is joining us from the US. Ada is in Kutix, Kutix Cables. Yeah, Kutix is actually my client, and Kutix makes some fantastic cables. Ada should soon be talking to you, because I have a project in my hand now and we'll soon be needing cables. All right, let's keep it coming. Okay, Pauline is joining from Abakaliki, Ebonyi State. Ibe Victor is joining from Owerri. Yeah, Mr. Anajeku from Enugu. Good to have you here. Good to have you here. Okay, awesome. All right, keep it coming while we get into the business of today. Okay. Okay, question for you in the chat. Question for you, everybody. And I would like this to be as participatory as possible. I'm so excited about what I am doing today because this actually came, is a personal journey. And I'm going to explain that later because I found that virtually most businesses that I have worked with, and then these are really hundreds of businesses, struggle with the subject matter of today. And I believe that that's also why you are here today. So for me, it's a personal journey. Some of the things I'm going to be talking about, I'm not going to be talking from an expert point of view, but as someone that's also going through this journey. So the question for you, for every single person here, let's make it very participatory. If you take a 2-year vacation away from your business right now as it is, what will happen to this business when you come back? All right, please type in the chat. Type in the chat, type in the chat. If you take a 2-year vacation away from your business right now, February 2023, okay, Charles says it will pause. Everyone to the chat, Let's set the energy going. Everyone to the chat, What will happen if you take a 2-year vacation? What would happen? Everybody to the chat, Think about it, okay? It should be where you left it to. You get back, it will be turning on its own, okay? All right, Tosin. Yeah, hello, Tosin. Nice to have you here, by the way. Tosin is a private client. It will pause, okay? Mommy said, sadly, the business will struggle. Definitely not where you left it. Kafayat says, business as usual, it will struggle. It will function. Femi, that's great, but I fear it may not innovate. Okay, it continues running. Business will struggle. It may simply go down. 2 years is too much for a level now. It's it's not necessary pause, but it will struggle. Okay, I'm blessed to be here. Okay, my own answer is that it will cease to exist. It won't even be there. So for those of you who said it's going to pause, I congratulate you. And some of you said you come back after 2 years, it will still be there, but it will struggle. So I think you're far, far, far better than my own situation. Because if I actually take, like somebody said, 2 years is too much. If I try it for 6 months, when I come back, I don't think I will meet a business. Okay, the way it is right now. That's why I'm on this journey. And Grace Mark also gives us a good reason why her own would continue to run. She said, because I have capable workers and good structure. That's fantastic. And that's the subject of today. So I congratulate you on that. Okay. So that's a good one. That's a good way to just focus our energy as we start. Now, look at this picture, and I hope my slides are showing. I hope it's moving. All right, because in the
yes,
past,
it's
moving. Okay, fantastic. So anytime it stops moving, you let me know. All right, so sadly, we've all witnessed what's been going on in Syria in the past couple of weeks. There was this horrible earthquake there in Turkey and in Syria. Now, this was one recently built apartment in a what would be in Ghana, Charles, that would be like an airport residential or cantonment. In Lagos, this would be, like Victoria Island.
Yeah, airport residential or cantonment.
Yes, exactly. Now, so this was the building before the earthquake, and that was the building after the earthquake, the same building. Okay. Now, what happened? Type in the chat. What happened? What's your observation in this before and after? What do you think happened? Okay, and then if you prefer to talk, please raise your hand and then we'll recognize your hand and then have you speak instead of typing in the chat. So if you prefer to talk, raise your hand. What happened? What's your observation? What do you think happened? And then we have a couple of people in real estate here. So it'll be nice to hear from Charles, and then I think there was a Raymond, there's somebody else in real estate here. And then anybody, what happened, okay? Okay, so Kayode says, there was no structural resilience due to environmental factors, okay? So that word structural comes in there, and then there's no structural resilience, all right? What else? What else? What else? What happened? Let's debrief what we're seeing in Syria. Type in the chat. Type in the chat. Let's make this very interactive. There's so much to unpack. So just follow me as we build the energy. What do you think happened between the left, what you see on the left, and what you see on the right? And then this was really very sad because this has taken the lives of, as of today, 33,000 people. So Innocent is architect. He says that the building tilted dangerously due to faulty, inadequate foundation. Okay. Rowley says activities of nature. That says structural defect. Okay. So that word structural comes out very strongly. It features prominently in the responses that you have given in the chat here. So the earthquake intensity was strong, which had great effect on the structure. Okay, very good. It's the effect of environmental factors, structural problems. So everyone is saying structural, and then that they lacked proper EIA before construction, environmental impact assessment. Okay, so I want you to put your business and then businesses in mind as you look at this and as you consider these answers that you have talked about, the impact of structure. And it's interesting, you know, what you said, Victor, when you mentioned it's a structural problem and then it lacked proper EIA. Because, you know, the headlines in Turkey and around the world, and I read a couple of articles, New York Times and different people saying that the government had relaxed on the building code and then the regulations. They had relaxed about those earthquake building code. And so right now, they've started deterring the building contractors. All right, because now most of these buildings, people paid for them because when they built them, they assured them that it had been built to withstand the earthquake. Okay, so that is very, very important. You know, so you see all the ruin and all the disaster you find in Turkey, and all of it with 33,000 souls, 33,000 people dead. That is a massive, massive crisis. The loss of one life is already bad. How much more? 33,000. And all this catastrophe that we are seeing here, everybody says it has something to do with structure. Okay. Now, the natural problems, nature will do what nature does. but it's the responsibility of us human beings to build, to resist, and then withstand that. Which leads me to my favorite subject about the companies in the world, around the world, that have lasted for 1,000 years, 500 years, 200 years, 1,400 years. Now, all these different challenges that we experience in our world today had existed 1,000 years, 500 years, but these people kept on running because what made them withstand the stress test, it's not what is outside, it's not what the natural environment is doing or climate is doing, but they have a structure that allows them to go from generation to generation without failing. And that is what we want to look at today. We want to examine the foundation. All right, another little quiz. Like, I really want this to be quite interactive. All right. So you see four, okay, let's call them structures. All right, because that's really what they are over there. These are just structures, frames of 5 different living things. So what living thing is this? Can you hazard a guess? Okay, A is very easy. A is very easy because it looks like you and me. But can you hazard a guess on what B is, what C is, what D is, what E is? Actually, there should be a prize for somebody who gets them. What is B? So just type in the chat. B is, what living thing is that? What animal is that? What is C? What is D? What is E? Okay, so we know that A is human beings. B is dog, Chisom says. Chisom. Chisom is a doctor. Feel that one. Okay. So Victor is correct. So B is a cat. Yep. B is a cat. Right. All right. C is a goat. I think that one is very easy. Okay, so you got it. You got it. Who got the goat? Okay, that's Akintunde. All right. C is a goat. D is a horse. No, it's not a horse. Okay, so refer to got it. D is a dog. D is a dog. Okay, and then someone says, what is, yeah, we haven't gotten E. I think we've gotten B. B is a cat. Yeah, D is a dog. What is E? We haven't gotten that one. I think that's the hard one here. But somebody, E is not a goat. Because if you look at C and look at E, E is a lamb. Okay, Ada. Okay, yeah, so E is sheep. Okay, now, isn't it interesting how you can look at the structure, the frame of these living things, and then be able to hazard a guess as to what they are? I want your business, and I want the conversation today around the ABC of structuring your business. I want it to be running at the back of your mind as I'm showing you these images. Now, if you want to build an A business, you can never use the structure of B. And the moment you choose structure B, that's what you stick. That's what you're going to stick with. You can never choose structure B and then arrive at living thing C or D or E. If you want to build a business model D, you cannot do it based on the structure of animal C. So every business has a structure, and that structure determines the ease with which that business will run. So the structure is a limiting factor, is a limiting idea. Many businesses, like I've worked literally with hundreds of businesses, and I find that many businesses well-intentioned businesses, they are failing and they have no idea where the bullet is coming from. They are struggling on a daily basis and then they have no single idea where the trouble is coming from. And they've been struggling for 1 year, for 2 years, for 5 years, for 10 years, for 15 years. I've met businesses that are still struggling with the same problems 10 years after that they were struggling with 10 years ago. This offers a clue. You want to run a business, but you're using a structure, D. And that in itself is a lot of frustration. So let's go right into it. How does it feel running a poorly structured business? How does it feel for you when you run a business that is not well structured? Like, that's what many of us, including myself, are doing now. How does it feel? What words, what emotions, how does it feel? Both your own experience and then the experience of others. What are the words? What are the emotions? How does it feel trying to make a poorly structured business sustainable and profitable? How does it feel? Type in the chat, please. And then if you want to talk, just raise your hand and then we will unmute you and then you can talk. How does it feel? That's one word, frustrating. Yes, I hear that word a lot. It feels frustrating. What else?
You feel stressed and pressured.
It feels pressured, okay? Feel bad, very frustrating, draining, lack of motivation, okay? Yes, I want to get those words. Exhausting, poor results. It's really challenging having a poorly structured business, and that fulfillment is never there. Yep. Sometimes, can it actually take somebody to the hospital? Make you sick? Yeah, poor results. Yeah, somebody actually said it here. Hypertension. Yeah, look at those words in the chat. That's exactly what it is. It feels discouraging because none of us here started the business, and decided to frustrate ourselves. None of us woke up one day and say, okay, let me start frustrating myself. Let me start a business and start frustrating myself, but we end up just getting that, it's too stressful, carrying the weight of the world while swimming against the tide. Exactly, just fail. Exactly. I like that metaphor. I mean, you're carrying the weight of the world and you're swimming against the tide. Stressful, highly exhausting, and then unfulfilling. Okay. And it's like you're in a maze. Exactly. Just mark all this. So the question is, why would we do this to ourselves? Why do we do this to ourselves? Okay. Now, in the context of that, whenever you talk about structuring, or you think about it in conversation, or you hear about it in conversation, what comes to your mind? What does it mean to you? In the light of all this frustration and the draining and all that, you think about restructuring. What does it mean to you? So can you be as specific as possible, or others are also learning from, we're also learning from the things that we have in the chat. But when you say structuring, I want to structure my business, what does it mean? What do you typically mean? Okay. Putting things in order. Putting things like what? Okay, but I like that expression, putting things in order. And the reason I'm asking this question is that I have found, traveling around Africa, working with entrepreneurs, everybody says structure. My business is not structured. I know that and all that. But then you ask people, what does it mean? All right. Okay, so Kachi, your hand was up. Was that by mistake or something? Okay, because it's down again. All right. So putting systems in place, Ray says, all right, putting processes in place. Omomi says that make it easy for newcomers to hit the ground running. Fantastic. Okay. Setting up a business flow. All right. Everybody just remark all the things coming there. creating business systems. It means setting the business on the right pedestal, systems and balance. Notice how certain words are coming again and again. I'm hearing systems a lot. I'm hearing processes. I'm hearing flow. Okay. Okay. So I'm hearing planning, things going as planned, which will bring about the desired results. There's efficiency, and Chidi also says organize. Right. So the words are coming. Okay. Now, let me tell you my own story, how all these things started for me, and why this is a very, very critical subject, okay? It's not necessarily in the order that it appears, but I did work with Stanford University way up to for six years, between 2016 and 2022, which was last year. Before I came on board, with Stanford University, they have this Stanford Seed Initiative, a very, very powerful initiative, that they try to identify high potential entrepreneurs from across Africa. It's also in India, right now, whom they are going to invest in, with all the Silicon Valley, Stanford, Graduate School of Business magic, and then they partner with those people so that they can impact their society, their countries, in creating jobs, in doing all kinds of, good work, fantastic vision. And the process was an eye-opener for me, because I thought it was just something as simple as, okay, just write a contract and then I work with them and all that. But the process and then the contract document, when I looked at those pages of contract, just eye-opening. The legal stuff and all the obstacles, all the legal obstacles that had to be overcome in order for me, a company operating out of Nigeria, to provide services for Stanford University. It was extremely challenging. First, we thought about setting up in Ghana. So I couldn't, that one didn't work, moving to Ghana and moving myself to Ghana, and the family, that didn't work. Then we talked about, they talked about, okay, dealing directly with me with a company in Nigeria, with my company in Nigeria. There were lots of hurdles that involved the Nigerian government, that involved taxation, involved all kinds of things that almost made it impossible for me to eventually do that work for Stanford University. And while that was going on, there were also issues around insurance, even in my office. So there was some type of insurance called general liability insurance. We couldn't go on with that work. They couldn't go on to sign me on, except I had that insurance. And then it was a complete total different kind of education for me, because part of the clause in the contract was like, they didn't want a situation where somebody would come to my office, maybe sleep on the staircase or something and hurt himself, and then Stanford University gets sued. It was interesting, it was intricate, but I'm just saying that the legal part of that whole transaction was an eye-opening thing for me. Okay, because typically, here I just talk with a client, says, okay, I want you to come and do something for me, and then I just do it, and then they pay and go. It's no contract, no whatever. But this one, pages and pages and lines and T's and I's that had to be dotted. I said, this is interesting. Okay, then later, I started consulting, working for MTN. the vendor registration for MTN was also interesting. They were asking for so many things that I didn't even bother about, like I didn't really know that my company had to be active. Like on a yearly basis, there were certain things I'm supposed to file on a yearly basis. Those things were not filed, and there was no way these people could do any business with me until all those filings were done, with FIRS, and then I had these certificates. So many legal requirements for me to work with MTN. So the vendor registration process, was also was some education for me, and eye-opening. Now, of course, I worked with Shell and Chevron, but I didn't really do too much in terms of contracting, just some really mild contracts that I supervise, in SNEPCO. But there was a legal department that took care of all the legal things, so I had no idea. But one of the things I knew was that to do some level of work with Shell, you had to be registered in a particular classification, in the vendor system. So there is a registration that allows you to do jobs for only under $1 million, only. Others for $500,000. But there were jobs categories that would allow you to do jobs of up to $10 million, $100 million, $200 million. So, ladies and gentlemen, you see, because I have a science background and I came into business, from that science background. And then many of you are like that, like many of you pharmacists here. So we didn't come from that background, to when we started our businesses. And I'm going to show you today that is those little things that we don't know about that's actually creating the structural problems that we have in our business. Because the greatest revelation for me in the past couple of years that I've been working with multinationals is that business is 90% legal. 90% legal. And let me put it up front that if you are ignorant about the legal part of your business entity, that business will struggle. That business will not fulfill its promise at all. Everything else you do in your business, the operations, the production, everything, finance, HR, those are just some tiny 5% of the business. The real thing is legal, like 100% legal. And because of all those fine prints, because I was musing today as I was preparing, this conversation, I was actually musing as to how many of us have actually taken some time to read those incorporation documents, when CAC registered your business. And then we have all those forms and all those incorporation documents, because basically we just paid a lawyer. That's what some of us did. And then, of course, they did the name search, and then they did that. I did a similar thing in Ghana because I have a consulting company in Ghana called Rapid Scaling Ghana Limited. Now, how many of us have actually gone back to study and read all those things? Now, the other part of my story was that recently I decided, when all these things started coming to me, especially last year, I decided, okay, I'm going to do everything right. And I hired a tax consultant and then an auditor, very, very experienced consultant and auditor who does, billions, like really billions of worth of business. And now they started asking me questions. And I found that I couldn't answer this question. I'm struggling to answer these questions. I don't even know my business. I don't even know my business enough to answer the questions that they were asking me. And then especially relating to looking at the account. So later I'm going to talk about that one, because many of us do not know where our money is going. I began to realize how critical, how impossible to actually have a structured business without record keeping. I think I'm moving ahead of myself. But I've just given you my story, which is a story of many businesses that I work with. I began to see how critical governance is in structuring your business, corporate governance. But you see, many of us say our businesses are very small. We, I'm just one person, I'm just two people, and then we don't have corporate governance. And it is, again, impossible for your business to last beyond you if you do not have corporate governance. So when I was thinking through these things last year, I said, okay, so I hired this auditor and tax consultant. And then I'm discovering that there's a lot that I do not know. This is part of the reason that I myself, even though I coach businesses and I coach individuals, I always have coaches myself, because it is them, you can't know everything. And then many of us need to quit acting like we know everything. You need the coaches, you need the experts, in their areas. Because if I had hired this guy a lot earlier, I'm seeing how structuring my business, if I had actually structured it properly, could have gotten me far beyond, where I am. So poor structure is responsible for stunted growth in revenue, in everything. The other final part of my story is trying to get into another country, which is starting my business, a business in Ghana. I found also how documentation was so critical. Everything, every documentation, taxes that I had to pay, to the Ghanaian authorities, the things I had to feel like it's every single day. Then there's also I have clients, who want to expand into other countries. It is impossible to expand into other countries. And I have a client who has expanded into like literally 20 or something countries in Africa alone. That expansion is impossible if you don't have a well-structured business. In fact, expansion forces you to structure. So the conversation we are having is a high-level conversation. It's very, very important. This is my story. So the truth is, if you really want to go beyond where you are, so because what I now did, I asked myself a question. I don't know how many of us have read The One Thing by Gary Keller. Fantastic book if you haven't read it. And this is one question, one focusing question that I got from that book that I use a lot. So I was asking myself last year, what is the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will become easier or unnecessary? This is a fantastic question that we should ask ourselves every day, every season, every quarter, because sometimes we're not getting the results we can in our businesses because we are focused on too many things at a time. But when we really look at it very well, there might just be just one thing that if we do it, all the other dominoes, will just kind of align. So when I ask myself this question, what is the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will become easier or even unnecessary? For me, it's to structure my business. So as I'm learning, I'm taking my clients on this same journey, and that's why we're having the conversation we're having today. And so most businesses are just one crisis away from failing. Even now, as I talk to you, the Nigerian presidential elections are coming up. I believe it's this weekend, on the 25th. They've already closed schools. Universities have been asked to go and stay home until after that, because people are expecting that there might be crisis. There are businesses that will not survive these 3 weeks of this next month, should there be crisis and then something happens. There are businesses that died in 2020 when there was a pandemic. Okay, so many businesses are just one crisis away from failing. This is what makes structure, the conversation we're having today, very, very critical. Then again, I read a startling statistic, that this was in the United States, and I think in Africa, it's even probably worse. 96% of businesses never make a revenue of $1 million all through their existence. Okay. So, and then in our own case, because of the devaluation, $1 million is roughly like 750 million naira. And then if you ask what percentage of Nigerian businesses actually make like 750 million naira a year, not to talk about in their lifetime, you will be amazed. And then I'm in a position to know, because I work with business schools. I'm adjunct lecturer in LBS, but I'm not involved in recruiting. I'm adjunct lecturer in China Europe International Business School. But I think where most of the exposure came was, doing some work, for Stanford. Now, because I was part of the recruiting for the businesses, and then part of it was for businesses to be accepted in the program, they had to be at a certain kind of revenue level. And I tell you, things aren't as pretty, when it comes to revenues that Nigerian businesses are making. The big ones that we hear about are the people who are bugaing on the newspapers and things like that as, entrepreneurs of the year and all kinds of things. They come out, they win all kinds of awards and all that. But when you look at how they are doing, then you see that this statistic that you're looking on the slide, is just really bad. And so for all of us here on this call, and then for all of you who continue to, I know I'm working with some of you here, my personal mission is to raise 1,000 unicorns, across Africa, who are going to lead the spiritual, the political, the economic, the social transformation of Africa, because I believe that entrepreneurs are the ones holding the key to solving Africa's problems. And I tell you sincerely, this conversation today around structuring your business, it is critical. In my journey and in the journey of the people in this place, who want to become unicorns, who want to build big businesses. If you want to do small businesses, this is not for you. But if you're really looking at being able to run a very large and sustainable business that's going to be there after you, then you need to pay attention to everything that we're going to be saying today. Okay, now, so what is structure? You've all talked about structure. What is structure? From everything I have come to learn, this is the best way I can describe what a business structure is. From everything I have, gone through myself, like I've shared my stories with you, I came to this realization that a business structure is the legal and organizational framework for the business to operate and function. Okay, so I need you to, if you want to screenshot this, because that's going to be, that's going to form the fulcrum of everything else that we're going to do today. If you understand this definition that we have here, then I think you've solved your structuring problem like 50% of the way. It is the legal and organizational framework for the business, for your business to operate and function. Now, what I discovered is that often when people talk about structure, they focus on the organizational part. But I've just demonstrated to you that the legal part is like 90% of this whole thing. So people focus on the organizational. They're talking about, okay, I want to employ a general manager, who can do this, and then they have the JD for general manager, or we want to employ somebody, who would just, do that. But there is a very important part of the structure of your business that has to do with the legal. So let's explore that. All right, so is a legal and organizational framework that a business entity adopts to operate, to manage its affairs, and to fulfill its objectives. It defines how the business is owned, managed, and controlled. The structure also determines the distribution of profits and liabilities among the owners. It impacts how the business complies with the legal and tax requirements, and it affects the success, the longevity, the growth of the business. This is what, whenever you talk about structure, this is what you should, all these things should come to your mind, not just the organizational, but the legal. So now, I want you to think about these two plants or trees that you see here. Okay, I think that Iroko tree is an image from Cameroon. Cameroon seems to have quite some, bit of Iroko tree and then wood. So look at the Iroko tree over there and look at the banana tree there. What comes to your mind when you look at these two plants and you relate it to your business? What comes to your mind? Just go to the chat, or if you want to raise your hand and speak, please do. I'm looking at the chat. So what comes to your mind? And then while you're looking at these two trees, what's the difference between these two trees? While you're talking about that, I have some really beautiful contributions here, messages that I haven't read. Okay, so Bliss. Hi, Bliss. Hi, Bliss. Nice to have you here. Bliss, are you still in Port Harcourt with Roland? Okay, so it means having the right plan, policies, processes, people, and tools that can help your business sustainably. Good. Okay, Roland says, right after Bliss, a framework that supports people performance. Fantastic, exactly. And then Toye gives us some really, really insightful list there. Setting the right business strategy within the framework of the market and industry forces that the business is to run in from the get-go. Pursuing the right business goals. Fantastic. This is great. Thank you. Thank you, Toye. I think that I should find a way to copy this and put it in the chat, in the slides. So if you guys want the slides, I can share them with you after. Yes. So Ifani says longevity. Hi, Ifani. Good to have you here. So Kachi says generational. All right. Yeah, the Iroko tree has a deep tap root. Okay. It could stand the test of time. It does. It's uncommon, and that says banana is everywhere. Okay. The Iroko is built to last. I like Chibike, I like that expression, built to last. And I think that kind of summarizes the sentiment that I want to convey, that we are here to build businesses that last. There's no reason why the things that we've started, should die with us. Okay. Iroko is generational. Exactly. All right. So that tree you're looking at there, by your left, that tree you're looking at there could be 200 years for all anyone cares. Could be 200, could be 300 years. Okay. And so my question for you, and it's really important that this is like a spiritual confession. Are you here to build Iroko business or banana business? Type in the chat. How many people are here? There's nothing wrong with banana. We still do banana, and then we eat bananas and things like that, but there's nothing wrong with that. Some businesses have to be banana. There's nothing wrong with banana businesses, but what are you here to build? Iroko or banana business? Okay, Iroko Who really wants to build Iroko? Okay, virtue, Iroko. Okay, build Iroko. There's nothing wrong with banana, by the way. Banana business. But I'm excited that most of what I'm seeing here is Iroko. All right, so that's what I'm going to show you, and I'm going to take you on that journey to building Iroko business. Okay. So now we said, remember that business structure has two parts. It's got the legal framework, it's got the organizational framework. Now, the legal framework, this is where I'm going to put a caveat because I'm not an expert when it comes to the legal. But what I'm going to do, because this is not the only time, I really want to explore the next couple of dinners to explore the issue of business structure, to the point that we will not just talk about them, but I'm going to be providing you with a framework to actually do it. And when we have the March dinner, we can now take take it, you know, have some kind of practical consultations. So there's a sole proprietorship, all right, owned and operated by a single person. That's a business structure. There's partnership involving two people. There's a limited liability company, all right, which combines the advantages of a corporation and a partnership, okay, provides its owners with limited liability protection, which we'll talk about later. Corporation, I think, and then if there's a legal person here, just raise your hand, and because I would like to give, if you have some more insights that can enrich our understanding about these things, then I would like you to, you know, just give you a couple of minutes to enlighten us a little bit more about this. But these are business structures. All right, so looking at this here, how many of us here just type the structure of the business that you are running right now? Let's have a sense of the business structures in the room. Is yours a sole proprietorship, the one-man business sort of thing? Is it a partnership? Is it a limited liability company? Is it a corporation like a PLC, or is it a cooperative? All right, so we have LLC here, we have sole proprietorship. All right, let's get a sense of the business structures in the room. It's LLC. Keep going. Okay, there's also sole proprietorship. Okay, LLC. Okay, good. Looks like we are mostly, all right. Looks like we are mostly LLC and sole proprietorship here. Okay, so these are the types of this. So this is the legal structure. Everything else proceeds the moment you choose this structure, any of these structures, just like we did that exercise with the different skeletal structures of different animals. The moment you choose the sole proprietorship skeletal system, it comes with its own framework, okay? So for instance, you cannot build a corporation with a sole proprietorship. And then you cannot do a limited liability company with the mindset of a sole proprietorship. But believe me, that's what many of us, including me, that's what many of us are doing. We are running a limited liability company, but we are still running it like it's a sole proprietorship. So be aware, you know, where the legal challenges begin right here. Is there any legal person, any lawyer who understands, or anybody who understands this thing, who can throw a little more light to it in the room? Any lawyer or anybody who's been in this journey, just indicate, and then we'd like to get to know more. Okay, now, so there are 5 components of a business structure, therefore, all right, putting all this together. So there is the ownership, and this is important. You know, the issue of who owns the business, how much of it do they own? Very, very important. And many of us do not know how important this is until there is a challenge, you know, or there is some disagreement in ownership, or there's something that involves the court, or something that involves the money that's been borrowed and all that. So there is the ownership, who owns the business. It's really important. Okay, Then I think some of us also start a business, and then we just call everybody, anybody around, friends and family people, and they, and then we make them shareholders and then give them certain kinds of ownership without even thinking about what it is that we are doing. There is also the management part, okay? Individuals responsible for managing the day-to-day operations of the business. So the ownership is not just the ownership, but the management. And there are two different things. Okay? So sometimes, the ownership is also involved in the management, but many times it might actually be healthy for the business to separate those, because the people who own the business might not necessarily be the best people to manage it. And then sometimes, family businesses have that challenge because it's owned by the family, and the family insists on being the ones managing it. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. People can still manage it better than you do, okay? Now, the third part of it is the legal status, which we just talked about. So when you talk about business structure, these are the 5 components. So the legal status, which we talked about, and then there is also the capitalization, the financial resources that the business has, including the money that was initially invested to start the business, and then other funds that have been raised. That's part of the business structure. Okay, so sometimes you find some people are going into a Series A funding, or they're going into some kind of startup funding, and then or later in the business, they even do LPO or something. So capitalization is a very important part of the business structure. And then the tax status. How is the business being taxed? Okay, is it taxed as a separate entity, or the profits and losses flow through the owner's individual tax liabilities? Olawosebiko says that sole proprietors are not separated legally from the liabilities of the business. Absolutely true, very correct. Okay, whereas the LLC owners are separated legally from the business liabilities. Very true. So later on, I'm going to show you some slides with some specific steps to what we will do, because what you've just said there is one of the key problems that we who have limited liability companies have. So one of it is the one I found the most difficult, especially when I started working with the auditor, is separating my funds, my personal funds, from the business funds. Okay. Do I have a witness in the room? Did any other person here struggle with that? Or you're also currently struggling with it? Just separating your own finances from the business. You are running a limited liability company. Separating your finances, your personal funding, from the business funding. Anybody else, or is it only me? Anybody else having that struggle, that challenge? That is one of the demons, the monsters that we must overcome. And there are many ways to do that. Yeah, it's pretty difficult. Anyone else, apart from Olawosebiko, having that challenge, of separating your own finances from the finances of the business? Okay, so I would like to know who else is having that challenge. And I would also like to know who has addressed that challenge successfully, how you did it, so that we can learn from you. Okay, yeah. I tell you, I'm not out of it yet. All right, I'm not out of it yet, but the auditor is definitely, helping me to deal with that. Yeah, it's a big deal, Chidi. There was a hand raised, momentarily, and it went. Is the hand still raised? Let me see. You can unmute yourself and then let us. Yes. Yeah. So, Olawosebiko, how did you come out of it? How were you able to? Can you unmute and tell us how were you able to come out of, that challenge of separating your personal money from the business money?
Okay. Good evening, everyone. What I tried to do was, number one, to have a corporate governance. So like we have people that we report to as well, people who will look through and ask you questions. And so because you don't want to mess yourself up, you're not going to board meetings to start speaking grammars. So we put corporate governance actually helped me out. And then of course, we separated our finances by I pay myself salaries. But what the problem really was before was the fact that when the company needs money, kind of throw your own personal money into the company. And so, I mean, it's justifiable that when company makes money, you want to just take money from there as well. But so, because there's corporate governance, or there had been corporate governance, we go back to board meeting, we let them know that we are struggling with finances, are we going to do it and stuff like that. So I think the corporate governance part of it helped me out.
Fantastic. So I've picked two things, which is useful for me, and then I believe for everyone else. So the first was actually paying yourself. All right, paying yourself. That also has helped me. I started, paying myself. What I'm struggling with right now is, and that's what conversation I'm going to have with my auditor. How do I structure that payment in such a way that, how do I structure my salary? Like, I knew that when I was in employment, for instance, there was a way Shell and Chevron structured our salary that was tax effective, because there's a way you are going to structure your salary, you pay much more than you should in terms of taxes. So that is one thing. The second thing that you talked about is corporate governance. So now, because the board has fiduciary obligations, it's no longer going to be in your head alone, it's now in the open. Like when you need to raise money, it's no longer just a problem that is in your head. The board steps in because they have that fiduciary responsibilities. And again, if you have a plan and then you want to spend money, like you have a transformation plan or like a project, you also have to pass it through these people and then they have to approve it. Unlike the way we have been operating, someone like me, like a sole proprietorship, okay, you just want to buy something, you want to buy a vehicle, you just go ahead and buy it. By the time you take it through the board, and then they ask you some serious questions, so that also puts some kind of internal control. So thank you very much. That's a brilliant sharing. Chef Lizzie, yes, let's hear your story. Chef Lizzie, you can unmute yourself and then speak. You are still muted. All right, Angela. Angela, you can unmute and speak. And share with
Good evening.
Yes, good evening, Angela.
The first one is have your process and procedures in place, the accounting processes and procedures. When you have the accounting processes and procedures, you see that you have to separate your personal transactions from your corporate transactions. And you have to open a corporate account. Opening a corporate account, because most of us don't really open corporate accounts. They start mixing the corporate account with their personal transactions. So you have to open your corporate account, register your business as an entity, and have your process procedure. Processes and procedures that at the end of the month, you have to do what we call a management account. And when you put all those things into effect, even if when company is not making it, because sometimes the company may require cash flow, you take it from your own personal transfer to the bank to the corporate, to the business. It should be recorded as you are as if you are giving the funding your. So when the company is making it and you feel that you are not increasing the share capital of the company, you can draw down from all the funding you have given to company. But in the face of the balance sheet, it will be there as you have known the company. So that is how we got out of it. But if you have to be preparing your account every month, if you have to do it, at least it will show But most often, businesses don't really prepare this account at the end of the month. That is where the challenges come up. So tracking your expenses and your cash flow is the best thing to do. Then you with process and procedures. Thank you.
Fantastic. Now, do you use any particular tool, or is something, or does your company use any particular tool to track this? Or
Yes.
This is manually done in Excel?
We use Excel, we use a software,
Okay.
an in-house developed software.
Oh, good.
So we use an in-house developed software to do it. But there's a lot of softwares that are quite cheap. One can just buy off the shelf software to do it. But even if you don't have that off the shelf or the resources to buy those softwares, you can use your normal Excel spreadsheet and be tracking it. If you don't have a good accountant, the only thing I always advise people is like, do as whatever you can do. Get somebody that will come in once at the end of the month to prepare all the documentation and then update your transactions. So if you don't have the resources to engage an accountant, you can get somebody, the professional that will come at the end of the month to do the work for you. There's a lot of us that do that kind of services. Right. So that is the
Angela, God bless you. Thank you so much. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you see, if you're like me, this kind of detail and then tracking this every day, okay, you buy stationery, you put this and all that, it can be so, what's the word? It can be so overwhelming because, you know, when you're the kind of big picture kind of person, but I'm telling you that the business cannot grow without this level of detail, being able to keep records. It's not possible for I'm seeing it now that I'm working with this detail. It's extremely difficult to grow the business if you don't do what Angela is saying. So I hope you made notes. Let's hear just one more from Authority, and then we can go ahead. If I can, we can call you later. So Angela, you can bring your hand down. Thank you. Yeah, Authority. Authority.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I just thought I should share a bit of my experience. It might not be the best, but listening to everybody, I thought so. Apart from having a retail pharmacy, I have a consulting firm, and I recently had an audit from FIROS. So we learned a lot from it. So the first thing, and I also attended some other business meetings like this, my First Bank and a few others overseas, that what they have advised is what I would give, particularly if you're running a consulting firm like ours, and how to be able to structure your salary in a way that it will meet the kind of levels you had at a corporate level. From the people in the UK, their advice to us was that as a corporate body, you need to have your expenses tied to your business as a director. So things like your DSTV, things like your petrol for your car, everything. So what did I do on the onset 5 years ago? I set up my business account, and I have a business card that fuels things like my fuel, everything is written. I didn't know the value until the FRS audited us this year. All those things are captured, and we use a software. We use QuickBooks Enterprise. So I have a young accountant who captures every single thing. So my hospital bills, everything. And that advice came from a meeting I attended like this, where people were asking, now I've left corporate, how do I now survive? Meanwhile, this is my business. And the guy said, according to the UK law, you could put all those things under director's expenses. And then if you give a loan to the business, like when I was starting off, the business didn't have any money. So I gave a seed money, but it was written as a loan in the books. And when FRIS came to our office, they wanted to see those kind of documentation. So the loan is called director's loan to the business. So every single money I give to the business, no matter how small, is director's loan, and there's a line on the accounts that gives that, and then all my expenses are into that. The reason he gave that was that he said otherwise you're going to fix a lot of tax if you pay it to yourself. But if they are treated as expenses, like I go for a business dinner with a client, I don't use my money to pay. I use the card, my corporate card, for the business to pay, and all that were captured in the FRS. And we make sure that we write our books, we pay our VAT, we pay our withholding tax regularly. Is not mixed. And then working for multinationals, just to strengthen what you are saying, most of our clients for our consulting firm are MNCs. They want to see those level of governance in everything that you do. So apart from having a small in-house accountant that captures all my expense, because there is no way you can capture for a receipt, that stationary receipt. So we just buy and give the guy. He goes, takes the bank statement and the card statement and writes it all up based on the QuickBooks account, which makes it very easy. We also have an external auditor, which we've had over the years. So when FIRS came, I didn't talk to them. It was this accountant and the FRS that brought out all the books and they were talking about it. So I just thought I should give those kind of insights. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Sorry, the last thing I just wanted to mention is that from the first bank meeting I attended, we were strongly advised that no matter how small your business is, have a board that you report to. That board guides you and gives you some level of control and all that. So we are in the process of setting up a 3-man board, and I've already contacted the chairman who will be part of our board. Thank you very much.
This is golden. Thank you so very much. That is structuring the business. Now, everything you've talked about revolve around the legal framework of the business and taxes. So often people focus, the problem is not necessarily the marketing, the operations and all that. But if you don't get all these things off the way, even FIRS alone is enough to just come and shut down that business. By the time they give you your liabilities and then you pay, you're no longer in business or something. So thank you. This is really brilliant. And I hope somebody else finds what she has shared extremely valuable. Thank you so much. So Ifeanyi will come back to you later. Let's make a little progress. So these are the 5 components of that. And then the 6 pillars of structure. In fact, from what Olaosebikon has shared with us, and then Osariti, and forgive me now, what they have shared with us, we can see the elements of all these things here. Let me get this chat box out of the way. Okay, now, so these are the 6 pillars. So the first of all, we're talking about the limited protection. And, we've already been told, that I think Laoshe could have mentioned that to us earlier, that the limited liability protects your personal assets, from business liabilities. It will amaze you the number of lawsuits that Apple has every year, that Google has every year, that Samsung has every year. You cannot be earning that amount of money that Elon Musk has every year, that name all of them. I think I once read that Apple has about 300 and something, like literally one court case a day. It's either relating to patent, somewhere, or it's relating to all kinds of maybe government infringement somewhere. And then you look at Mark Zuckerberg and the issues he had with the different governments in the different countries, China, and then the regulations, all these places. So you discover that this thing is more about the legal framework of the business than just, programming, writing Facebook codes or writing Amazon codes and things like that. So Amazon goes to India, there's a whole lot of legal, like the work is legal. Selling things there and then doing logistics is just very little. All right, so the first pillar, limited protection. All right, some structures provide limited liability protection, others don't. Limited liability can protect personal assets from business because those are two separate entities. So if somebody comes, if your business is owing, and then correct me if I'm wrong, here, if your business is owing, if it's a limited liability company, your business is owing, they won't come after your own private property, like your land or something, or your stocks. But if it's a sole proprietorship, yeah, they're going to come after your, your investment in the stock market, your landed property and things like that. So that's very important. The second thing is tax implications. And then you've seen what she shared with us just a moment ago about taxes, okay? We've talked about the ownership and then the management. We've talked about the regulatory requirements. Different business structures have different regulatory requirements. The filing fees, the annual reports, the legal documentations, and all that. All right. Then some business structures have more funding and investment opportunities. So I remember a couple of years ago, I did something with a couple of business owners. We ran a program at EDC, Lagos Pan-African University. I don't know what it's called. I think Pan-Atlantic or Pan-African, university. And then Bank of Industry was supposed to give certain loans or something, for people to start their business or to run their business. It was difficult for certain kinds of businesses to even have a conversation with Bank of Industry. And then you go there, they have their requirements and they tell you this must be in place, this must be in place and all that. So certain businesses, at that time, I remember that service businesses weren't getting anything. And I remember going, and then they told me, the guy who was in charge said, no, that if I can go into printing, for instance, that they'll give me money immediately. They were to give me 150 million or something, but I remember mentioning it to my wife. I mean, I don't have passion for going to become a printer just because I wanted the money. So there are funding and investment opportunities related to that. Then, of course, the other particular pillar is the goal of the business. What's your business set up to do? What is it set up to do? And then often the goal of the business is captured in your vision and your mission statement. So many people don't understand that vision and mission statements are important assets, to your company, to your business. It's not just something you call someone to scribble for you. It's a process for creating vision and a mission, and then a process of implementing and communicating that vision and mission in the organization. So in summary, a well-structured business has a clear sense of direction where it is going. It's got well-defined processes and roles. That's all we've been saying. It's got strong leadership. And then I really want to emphasize leadership, because if you've worked with me, you've heard me say many times that no business can outperform the quality of its leadership. No way. The leadership becomes the limiting factor. So you might have a great business, but if you have poor leadership, the business will default to the level of leadership. Skilled employees, efficient use of technology, and an insane focus on meeting the needs of its customers, okay? Now, so if your business is stuck, like mine was, so these are, so I call this the A, B, C, D, E of unstocking your business, getting your business unstuck. So many of us here, some of us here are running a sole proprietorship. Some of us are running limited liability companies, but we feel stuck. We just feel stuck. We feel overwhelmed and frustrated. And it's all around this issue of the structure of our business. So the first thing to do, the A stands for alignment, okay? So you've got to think about your overall strategy, your business goals, your strategy. What is it? What exactly are your business goals? And you've got to align your structure with this business goal. You know, I found it very curious, you know, when I was in Shell, that at about that time, literally every 4 to 5 years, Shell reorganized, restructured. And it always coincided with when they run, because they used to have this 5-year business goals or business strategy. So whenever there is a new direction, a new business goal, a new business strategy, these multinationals reorganized to align with where they were going. But see, what I find very interesting is that many of us small businesses, that the same structure we started when our businesses started 14 years ago, 20 years ago, the same organizational structure, the same structure that we've been running, that's what we've been running for 15 years, for 20 years. And then we wonder why it's not growing. You see, because the cloth that your toddler wore, you know, and then your baby wears the same cloth that he wore when he was 2 years old. He's still he's still wearing the same clothes at 15 years. That's ridiculous. That's exactly what we are doing in our businesses. When we don't align our business structure to our strategy and to the goals we're trying to accomplish. The second part of getting your business unstuck is to look at your business processes, because often our businesses are overwhelming because our processes are out of whack. All right, so we have to look at our business processes to improve efficiency, to reduce costs, and to increase productivity. I once worked with a client, you know, they do baking, they make bread and pastries and things like that. And then on one occasion, you know, I mean, there was the issue of waste, just so much. On one occasion, literally everything that they produced had to be, you know, well, wasted. And then customers who bought the bread and places they supplied the bread were coming back and they were returning the bread. That's a lot of loss. So you've got to look at your current processes and then think about how you're reducing muda. Okay, so muda is waste. There are 8 forms of waste in business. We can deal with that at another time. So you need to look at your processes, look at where there's a lot of bottlenecks and where there is a lot of waste in the system, reduce it. The other thing to unstuck your business is actually to build a strong customer-centric culture. Before you even do that, you know, many of us serve everybody. You serve everybody, you know, you're a small business, but you're serving 10 or 15 different kinds of customers. That is a recipe for frustration. I can't work with everybody. I can't work with everybody, and I don't work with everybody. When I started, I was doing it. They call me here, I go, they call me here. So the way customers select who they work with, it's also the way businesses should select the customers you work with. When you find your customer, your right customer, your ideal customer, you will enjoy what you're doing, because those ones will pay, you won't have too many of them, and then you'll be able to focus and concentrate and give them the best that you can. But when you try to serve every kind of customer, just because you're trying to survive, you're actually losing. But when you focus on one customer at a time, it's not that you cannot serve different customers, but when you serve one at a time, then you master one market at a time, then you can go to another one. So customer focus is important. Then you're making data-driven decisions. All right. Some people just come to the office, some owners, some CEOs, and they just do okay, let's do this today. Let's do this today and all that. But what's the data saying? What's the data saying about the market where you are in? What's the data saying about your employee performance? What's the data saying about your supply chain? So you need to monitor, to have metrics, things that you're, so you ask yourself, what's the most important data that I should be capturing from operations every day? The data that will allow me, to make informed decisions. Okay, so I worked with a client who is into hospitality, has hotels and then a bar and all that. And they capture data, which is the foot traffic, people who come into their bar. They have this special catfish, whatever I think they are one of the best in Lagos, who do that. So lots of people come and they capture how many people actually come in there, like on a daily basis. And that's very useful data, because if you have 75,000 or 300,000 foot prints every month, and then in one particular month, you have 700,000, then you need to find out what happened, what spiked it. Or maybe you have 95,000. That is crisis. Why did it drop from 300,000 to 95,000? So a lot of businesses here in this part of the world, because I'm in the know, don't work with data. Many businesses collect data, but they don't work with it. Even retail, some retail businesses, do you collect data as simple as the average cart value? Do you know how powerful that kind of information will be for you in making decisions? If you collect average cart value, every customer that comes in there, the average cart value is, say, 5,000 naira. So whenever that average cart value comes down, you should analyze and find out what is causing this trend. And then you can make decisions. So then the other thing is employee satisfaction, employee engagement and satisfaction. Jack Welch, the late Jack Welch said that if you were to run a business on only 3 metrics out of thousands of metrics that there are, that he will run it on customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, and cash flow. So these are 3 important metrics to look at. All right. Employee satisfaction is important. Okay. Provide opportunities for your employees to grow. Nobody wants to come into your company and then rot. Provide opportunity for professional growth, recognize, reward achievements, create a generally positive work environment where people are not coming because they don't have any other choice, where people are not just coming to mark time until they get employed somewhere else, but where people actually feel that they belong and that they are part, that they are owners in the vision. Okay, this is an exercise I want us to do before we start bringing it to a close. Now, somebody gave us that phrase earlier on today about building to last. And this is the whole subject of structuring our business, because you're structuring the business to grow. You're structuring the business so that it can perform without your presence, without you being there, so that that business can continue to run profitably, even without you, providing jobs, remaining profitable, funding your lifestyle, funding other things that you want to do. Maybe you want to spend your time, working with a girl child in Africa. Maybe you want to spend the time building orphanages or working with physically challenged people, whatever it is. It's the business that's going to fund that lifestyle. And then structuring it is critical for the business to fund the lifestyle, because at the end of it, you're in business so that that business can free your time to be able to do what God has put you here to do. So what we're going to do, I want you to think about 1,000-year business plan, all right? Let's say what you're doing right now would be here in another 1,000 years. And then you want to create a business plan that is 1,000 years. What would it look like? So I want us to get into the breakout rooms for just 5 minutes, brainstorm this, and then when we come back, we start rounding off. This is the first part of the conversations around structuring our businesses. Okay, co-hosts, how do we set up the breakout rooms? We are 70, so let's set up 10, and then let's set up 10, and then have roughly like 6-7 people in it. Okay, so everybody, you'll be in the breakout room. Let's do it for 7 minutes, and then we would have you started seeing the breakout rooms. So take 7 minutes, brainstorm around what does a 1,000-year business plan look like? What would it contain? What would be in it? All right, so go into your breakout rooms right now, and I see you in 7-8 minutes. So accept quickly and go to your room. What does a 1,000-year business plan look like?
Yeah.
Okay, Authority, you asked for help. So what you're working on.
Yes, what are we supposed to do? Yes, I don't know.
Okay. What would a 1,000-year business plan look like? What would it contain? What would it look like? Then you select one person. Select one person. So when you finish your conversation, just select one person who will give us like a 1 minute or 2 minute summary. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Go for it. Go for it. Don't overthink. Just do it.
It looks overwhelming. 1,000 years. Oh my God.
Mhm. Okay, so your conversation, when you're done, just select one person who is going to report your conversation. The question is, what would a 1,000-year business plan look like? What does it look like? All right, so you have just a couple more minutes. And then you select one person who is going to share. It's quiet in here, by the way.
that perspective, even when you're starting small, having that little perspective, where the business is, vision of the business, that it is business that will outlive you, setting the model, setting the standard, the structure on the ground from day one, and judiciously following them to ensure that it doesn't compromise it, it's not sentimental. You have to be principle based and very strict, in ensuring that the business is. He made mention about the business is almost 90% legal and 10%, operational, finance, and other things.
It's quiet in here. What's going on? Okay.
So since I'm not sure you can hear me.
Okay.
Yes, I hear you.
Okay.
Oh, okay. All right.
What does 1,000-year business plan look like? I think you have just like 2 more minutes or something. Okay. This is room 3. Okay. Okay, so everyone, welcome back. I think we're still expecting a couple more rooms to close and join us. Okay, so while they are joining us, what was difficult about this exercise? What was difficult or easy about this exercise? Anybody, just raise your hands and unmute and speak. What was difficult about this exercise? Or easy? Anyone?
Yeah, brainstorming.
Brainstorming? Okay. Allow Shebiko. Oh, sorry.
For us also, we didn't have a focused business, so that was difficult. We didn't have a particular business we were focusing on. We had real estate, we had pharmaceutical, we had financial. So where are we going?
Okay, very good. Okay, and so the interesting thing is, it doesn't really matter what business it is. It doesn't really matter what business it is. I don't know how many of us know that Samsung started as a noodles company. They started with making noodles. So today they are all over the place, doing all kinds of things, electronics and technology, shipping, defense, engineering, procurement, all kinds of things. But they started with noodle, but they are still in business today. I don't remember, there's another company. Most companies just started with different things, like 100 years ago, 200 years ago. Shell actually started with trading, and they are now a exploration and production, and they're also downstream company. Okay, Akintunde. Yeah, unmute yourself and then share. And then after that, we'll go to Allow Shebiko. Akintunde, your hand is up.
Okay, hi, good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Okay,
so my idea of having like a plan of 1,000 years stems from, I'll take it this way. Over time, the economic space is dynamic, changes from one decade year, from another year, government policies from one year to the other. But I think one thing should be constant in the life of any organization is to have a clear vision and a mission of what the are set out to do. If you have a clear mission and a mission, irrespective of the economic environment that you are working with, you will always be guided by that vision and mission. And first thing you need to, your business plan should revolve around a solid structure that can, you know, over time does not change, and it has to be to stand on a very strong business continuity strategy, such that irrespective of the what the economy is saying, irrespective of the government policy, irrespective of the environment, irrespective of whatever, you know, things throw at you, there's a business continuity plan guided by your vision and mission.
Very good. Business continuity. Very good. Excellent. Okay, thanks. Ola Shebiko. Unmute yourself. Okay.
Okay, so what was difficult and what was easy. And I think what was quite difficult in the 1,000 years business plan also has to do with demography, where we are, where nothing is really guaranteed. Nothing is, nothing, you can't really, we're having elections this week in Nigeria, and everybody is already running here and there. You know, we don't really, nothing actually is guaranteed. So that has to do with it. So it becomes pretty difficult for businesses to even plan for months, talk less of years, and then 1,000 years. That was quite difficult.
Right.
But then something that I find quite easy, if we are able to put in the business plan, is probably a succession plan. The strategy for succession. So once that is properly embedded, then it will be followed, and then the structures of the normal business plan can be followed, and then the number of years that it takes can be elongated. So it might be possible if that is put into consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Authority. Then after that, Rolly.
Sorry. Thank you, everyone. From our group, apart from having a compelling vision and mission, we also said we should be R&D driven and be ready to reinvent ourselves at every time. The discipline was to look at corporations that have lived for long. So initially we thought, oh, we are bankers, we are this, we are that. Then we said, no, it's a framework we need here. A strong vision, a strong mission, R&D driven, and be ready to reinvent yourself at any time. As somebody mentioned, 1,000 years to come, none of us will be here. But the business can continue if we have a strong, compelling vision, mission, R&D, and be ready to be innovative, to change with the situation as they change. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Rolly. Thank you very much, Authority. Rolly, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, so for us, some of our points have already been mentioned. So we started out with structure. I think without that, nothing really can stand test of time. And then we talked about succession planning, which involves not just even the board or so of the company, but even the employees. I think I've seen in some instances where even the children of somebody who started out with the owners, where it comes on board later, and you see children of workers in the same company, you know, just going on. So that's even in the matter of the succession plan. Then we said it should be dynamic, that's being able to change with the times, not sticking to, oh, because this is how we've always done it, or this is the only thing we've ever done. We stick to it, even if it's not, you know, it's not moving us forward, moving the business forward. If that's a business that will last 1,000 years, must be dynamic. Right. And then have subsidiaries. I think you mentioned something like that, where we may be a furniture company, for example, but then we can go into real estate. We have a lot of other things that we are doing that if one is not even working at a particular time, there's always something that will bring in money to the parent body, and you know, the business can continue. So that's what we have.
All right, awesome. Okay, let's see how many more we can take before we start. We have like 14 more minutes left. Okay, Roland, just briefly. Roland.
Right. Thank you, sir. Okay. So I think quite a lot have been discussed already about what we discussed in our groups. Okay. But most importantly, I want to also add that core values of an organization, it's also very important. A lot of things might change over the years, you know, then demographics and the rest of it may also change, depends on where you find yourself. But if there's a principle, you know, at which, or a standard behavior at which the organization is living with, so irrespective of generations that come over time, and that core value is there and they stick to it, then they can survive for as many years as possible.
Thank you, Roland. Okay, Maomi. Maomi. We can't hear you. We can't hear you. We can't hear you. All right, Virtue. Why Maomi gets a microphone? Virtue.
Okay, from our group, that's room 7, we usually discussed it just on the surface, but then how we started was looking at parent companies who have also outlived us. You know, they say people that actually have mentors and they move faster, higher, and actually better, having a vision. So you could always search out for companies that have lasted much more than yourself, good enough on the same plane or having the same vision. You could actually fly better because they've made a lot of mistakes. You could correct quicker, okay, and then keep on having them in front of you. You always do better. Our children are always better than we are because they look at our mistakes. And then, so after then, we now talked about how then we brought up the fact that you said we should focus on 3 major areas, mostly structuring a business. We actually bought into that idea that you look at the customers consistently, whatever your vision or your mission statement is, the customer satisfaction, the employee satisfaction, it will be home to them, not just an office, not just a place they come and pass 8 to 4 or 8 to 6. No, it's home to them. They literally would, they feel that their names are imprinted in the name of the company, you know. So the failure of the company, it's their own failure. Their children will also carry it up. People that are going to come and maybe replace them in the offices, maybe as a result of retirement or whatever, they will transfer the same, let's say, spiritual energy, vision, and, you know, the positivity downwards. I think it's then the capital, you know, flow, making sure the capital is steady. So that's actually what we discussed in room 7. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thanks, Virtue. Okay, Tayo, finally. Tayo? Tayo, unmute yourself. Okay, we can hear Tayo. All right. So this is really amazing. And I think that this is something I would actually encourage you to go back to do with your team, because it's very hard to think long term. It's very hard to visualize the future, but it's a discipline that we can grow in and visualize the future. And I remember listening to Brian Tracy some years ago. He had an interview with a Japanese bank manager or bank owner. And then the guy said that he had 300-year business plan. And it's very common in Japan, you know, for people to have such long-term plans for 300 years. 200, 100 years. And so he asked this gentleman, but you won't be here in 300 years. He said that that's why he did the plan. And the oldest companies in the world come mostly from Japan. The oldest companies in the world, companies that have lasted 1,200, 1,400 years. I studied one of those companies. And one of the things that they've gone through 50-something generations. One of the things I found interesting is their emphasis on culture and then on values. just like, one of the groups mentioned. I'm also thinking about this matter myself, because if I want my business to last 1,000 years, I need to be very intentional about it. I need to even begin to think about it, And one of the things it does for me is that I see whatever political challenges or problems happening in the country, I just see them as blips, just like blips on the scale of eternity, just blips that will just blip and go. All these people we are talking about and all these people making news today, they are not going to be there in another 50 years, but life continues. So one of the ways I process it is, first of all, when you see your business as a spiritual mission, see, spirits don't die, your flesh can die. That's why that's why people's vision can live beyond them. Martin Luther King is long dead, but there's no day you won't hear somebody say, I have a dream, somewhere. And there's so many people like that, their dreams live on, even though they are physically dead. So your business, when you look at it like a spiritual mission, which is really what it is, because the worst reason to set up a business is to make money. And I can guarantee that if you set up business just to make money, it's going to die. It's going to die because money is not a very good sustainer. But if you set up business because there's some real, there's a compelling, spiritual need. And when I say spiritual, I'm not talking about religion. That's nothing, about that. Then it's very likely that that mission will be strong enough to pull the business through the changing times and seasons. Mercedes-Benz started in 1901, I believe it was. 1901. Since that time, they have had two world wars. Since that time, they've had so many economic crises. Since that time, they've had all kinds of leaders and dictators and all kinds of difficulties. But the company outlived all of them. The company outlived Hitler. The company outlived the economic crisis in Germany. And, they are still there today. So we can build things, and we should build things that outlive us. The second thing is, I ask myself, what will still be there in 1,000 years? What will still be there in 1,000 years? In other words, what will always be there? What was there 1,000 years ago that is here now that will still be there? And the answer is people. The answer is people. And for me, I believe that business is something God has kind of gifted us with the ability to be able to serve people, to be able to solve the needs, of humanity. And then the money is just a byproduct of what we are doing. When I look at what I do, and the joy comes not from the money, but in fact, even like in the past 1 or 2 years alone, the number of people that come to me and say, I wanted to take my life, but you saved me. Or people who actually call me and say they want to take their lives, and then I speak with them and they are still alive and they come out of that depression and things like that, and I have such gifts, I have such grace. Businesses that were dying. I remember facilitating a business, and then this business they were in terrible shape. The bank went to their production, to their facility, shut them down, and they went out of business. It was horrible. The man and his wife suffered. They even had to go and start looking for a job. Literally became homeless, as it were. And then I see them, husband and wife, in November last year, and they are back on. The business is booming, doing very well after that horrible experience. And they said, oh, boy, thank you. We've learned our lesson. And through that time, they were going through all that horrible. I was in touch, I was praying with them, praying for them, supporting them, and all that. And then they are, so there's a joy. There's a joy that comes, from doing these things that is beyond the money. So people will always be here, and opportunities to serve, problems will always be there. Like in Nigeria, I think there's a saying that problem not a finish or something. So in 1,000 years, there will still be problems. And so being able to love people, to serve, to solve problems would always be a very excellent business, to last for generations. So finally, let me just share the, 2 final slides, and then we can, we can round off for today, and then look forward to March. So I try to see from my work, what I do with organizations, it's like, okay, if somebody wants to restructure their business, what do they do? The first step is to stress test that business, and you stress test it. I think people with banking background, they're familiar with banks, being given stress tests to see whether, they will survive. Some of the tests I give my clients, I think I did it with you guys in Kutix when I came there. I say to you, suppose you get an order, all right? You get an order that is 100 times your normal deal. Are you going to be able to execute it? Suppose you get an order. Let's say you're a school, okay? You normally enroll 300 people. I mean, your school population is 300 people. Then by September, all of a sudden, 3,000 people just show up. Something just happens, and then 3,000 people show up. Can you handle it? That's a stress test. Another stress test is you leave this business. You actually leave your business. Just get out, go to somewhere, Cameroon or Ghana or Senegal, and just stay away for 1 month. You're going to learn a lot about your business. Or you stay away for 2 weeks, you're going to learn a lot about the business. So stress test it to along that. And then both the stress testing and then analysis of your business, you need to do a comprehensive analysis of your business. We have a template, in-house that we used to do that. Okay, so, and this is going to help you to find out the specific places where your business is ailing. There are specific parts of your business that are causing the failure, contributing to the failure. So you have to analyze all that. And then the third thing is, now from your analysis and from the stress test, it becomes clear, where the fault lines in your business are. So you identify those areas for improvement, including the misalignments. All right. So sometimes in this step 3, we use the 7S, McKinsey's beautiful tool called the 7 S's. All right. So you look for misalignments in structure, in strategy, in your operational processes. These things are not rocket science. If you don't actually sit down and do this, because I think for us, most times in Africa, we struggle with doing detailed work, really sitting down and doing detailed work. We just want to run. And then sometimes, we want to use prayer as a shortcut. But when it comes to this sort of thing, we pray, God gives us wisdom, but prayer is not a shortcut to sitting down to actually identifying areas that need improvement in your business. And then, based on all this, the stress test, the comprehensive analysis, the identification of the fault lines in your business, you now develop a comprehensive restructuring plan, the type that Shell normally does, the type that Chevron normally does. When I joined Chevron, they did the same thing. So you develop all those comprehensive plan, all right? Specific steps that the business will take to identify the issues, while constantly looking at the big picture, remembering that structure consists of 2 major things: legal framework, okay, all the legal and all the taxation and all those issues. Like, I'm really dealing with the taxation issues in my business right now. And then there's the organizational framework. Then step 5, you implement. Okay. By the time you finish developing in step 4, you already have metrics. Okay, you have metrics. And then, because you don't start implementing without metrics, because otherwise you can monitor anything. You implement and monitor the restructuring plan. And of course, if you want us to help you through this, we are very happy, to bring in tools to help you to stress test your business and then to create a plan, to structure it so that, number 1, it will become more profitable, it will be able to achieve its potential, and then number 2, it can be sustained. And then finally, in terms of practical steps, I think we've already looked at some of this. Separate your personal funds from company funds. Study, take your incorporation documents and actually study it for the first time. If possible, ask the lawyer, who did it, what does this mean? What does that mean? What are the implications? And then I also believe that there are many rights that accrue to us as a legal entity and as a business that we don't know about because we don't know this business. Okay, study, then do your taxes. I plead with us because you see, it's so easy to hide under the radar of the ineffectiveness of taxation in Nigeria. One is the taxation, our taxes. There's no proof that they're actually being used, but that's not your business. It's not my business. The people we are paying these taxes to will account for it. If they don't do it in this life, they'll do it in the next. So, but that's not our business. But actually discover, I can't explain it, but the more taxes you pay, the more successful you are as a company. So it's a good thing to actually desire to be able to pay taxes. Last year, I think Dangote paid like $11 billion. I don't know whether that's all the tax, sorry, Naira. I don't know whether that's all the tax or just a part of his taxes and all that, but that's good. Elon Musk in the US, I don't remember how much. I think it's about that $11 billion or something like that the guy paid. So it pays to pay taxes. And I think I want to change my mindset around taxes. And I want you to change your mindset around taxes. Let's not evade taxes. And I think in Nigeria, I don't remember, but I think if you do revenues less than, I think 25 million or something, somebody can correct me, then I don't think you pay corporate taxes or something like that. But why would some people say, okay, I don't want to pay taxes, so let my revenue remain small? Yeah, no. So let's develop the mindset to pay our obligations, because the higher the taxes we pay, the more prosperous we become as a company. And then I believe that there are rights we have as taxpayers, as tax-paying businesses. Review your mission statement. Many things that people call their mission statement is not really mission statement. There's a huge process. A few of you here, I think I've helped you craft your mission statement. Sometimes it takes a whole day, sometimes it takes half a day. All right, it's not just something you cobble together. Mission statement is one of the most powerful things that rally your employees around your vision. Okay, think about organizational alignment. Sometimes your goals are going one way and then your organization is going another way. Every strategy demands that the organization be aligned to be able to accomplish that. Some people have organizational designs that are cannibalizing their company goals. Build teams, kill the silos in your organizations, and there's also a way to do that. Then, above all, develop yourself. You can't give what you do not have as a leader. I can't emphasize that enough. The business actually comes down to developing yourself, because you see, when you develop yourself, when you grow, the business grows. The business cannot grow beyond you. So develop yourself, hire a coach. I'm biased about that one because I'm one. Okay, create your culture document. Workplace culture, it is important. And if you don't know how to do that, please find out how to do that. Culture is important. At some point, you need to go from being a CEO, chief executive officer to a chief culture officer. Then review the psychological safety in your workplace, right? And then get help. All right, so this is where I apologize, we've shot 7 minutes over our time. But I hope it has been a very useful evening, a very useful dinner chat, for you. So just before we round it off, I'm not sure we're able to take questions now, but you can still, we can keep the WhatsApp group specifically for this, not for forwarding daily manner or something, but specifically for this. So if you have some questions or some other things you want us to focus on in March, feel free to to ask there, and then we can take it. But in the meantime, just do us a favor. You just put in the chat, what was most useful for you? What was your aha moment? What did you really find most useful? What are you grateful for? So if you just do that within 30 seconds, then we can formally round off. You're all welcome. Welcome, Adam. Okay, excellent. Okay. All right. Yeah, so if you haven't joined that group, Williams has just posted the group. But of course, I know we are all mature people and we are all business leaders, so we don't forward anything and all that. So it's basically on this. Yes, you will get the slides. Okay. All right, the 1,000 years. Yeah, you'll get the slides, and then you'll also get the video recording. Okay. Okay. Oh, thank you, Ada. We'll look at that very much. Okay, so I want to thank all of you very much, and then I wish you a very good evening and a wonderful rest of the week. And I'll see you again during the virtual business dinner in March. Thank you all so much. Thank you very much.